anyway, recording is the electrocardiogram, which may be noted as ECG or EKG. And as I said, normally in the hospital situations, they will say EKG. I mean, how many of you have heard it spoken of as ECG in the hospital? Most of you haven't been around that anyway, so you haven't heard it either way. All right, now, instrument is electrocardiograph. That's the machine. Electrocardiogram, this right here is the electrocardiogram. That's the electrocardiogram. The machine that did this, and you were hooked up, you don't remember how many leads?
I think there was
4. Normally, when they really get serious with this, I mean, they were serious there, but normally, they will do a 12-lead EKG. And many times, I don't think Jerry put 12 on me.
I know he did. They put 2 on my leg.
Yeah, they can do that too. Yeah, definitely. Definitely, they can hook that up. But anyway, right here, deflection wave. Okay, now these things right here are deflection waves. Deflection waves are like this. All right, we go like this. These are deflection waves. This is called the P. This is the Q. This is the R. This is the S. This is the T, and they all stand for something. Now, if this thing right here is very real enlarged, like that can indicate, and coming up like this, that can indicate a myocardial infarction. If this ST, this is called the S, from here to here is called the ST segment. If that segment is elevated, that can indicate an MI. If this, now this is what they look for if the guy's got blockage in the heart. Kimberly, this is what they look for if there's blockage. A depressed ST segment can many times indicate coronary artery blockage. And if that, in other words, the cardiologist, they can look at that thing. And when I first had that heart situation, way back in 1997, I mean, the cardiologist over there in Metz's office, he came from Bayshore. Now, I wasn't going to stay. I wasn't going to Bayshore. There ain't no way. But I went over there. No, seriously, I'm not being ugly. But seriously, I was going to the medical center. If I had a problem, I was going to the and the cardiologist said, well, don't do any exercising. You need to see somebody. You need to come down. And I called my brother-in-law in St. Luke's. I said, Uncle John, hey there. I said, John, the ENT guy. I said, I need who would you recommend over there for cardiologist? He said he leads me cardiology. He recommended that group right away, so that's where I went to St. Luke's. And then they did an angiogram and so forth. But now they can look at the EKG, the stress EKG, not the normal. The resting EKG, walking along, just a rest, or lying down on your back with the EKG. I mean, that will show many times just normal stuff. Yet there can be major blockage, Nikki, major blockage. But when you put the heart under stress, if there's a problem, it will show. It does show up. It really does. All right, so anyway, everybody, now right here, now the echo, we'll talk about the echocardiogram. That's a type of sonography. The echocardiogram will definitely indicate if there's AFib or something like that. Atrial fibrillation. The nuclear stress test, which he didn't do that with me last time. Now, I don't know why, Leachman, I don't know why he didn't order that. The nuclear stress test, that's injecting radioactive stuff in you, and that will tell the condition of the muscle, everything. He didn't do that. I know that's a very expensive test, and there was some concern. He had already done that once, but there was some concern with how much insurance would cover on that. So I'm going to have to ask about that. I'll call them and ask them. I know some of those women that work in the office, so I'll call and find out about that. But anyway, everybody, right here, the up and down waves, like I drew over there, known as deflection waves, leads are placed on the body surface at various locations. That's what's called a lead, placed on the body at various locations. All right, now deflection waves, next slide. Okay, there it is. Now we're going to go over this in lab. Let me show you all this. If you have a book, now let me show you. Let me just show you something right here. Let me just show you something right here. All right, now look. Okay, sometimes they'll use in clinical work, rather than PQ, they'll use the PR interval. They'll use the PR sometimes. Now that PR interval, or PQ interval, PQ, sometimes, I never really don't know why they do, but they'll do say PR. But technically it's the PQ interval. Now look, here's the beginning of the P wave to the beginning of the QRS. That cannot be, if that's greater than 0.2 of a second. Now listen carefully, if that's greater than 0.2 of a second, they say, you've got a first degree heart attack. a first-degree heart block. Everything here deals with the electrical system of the heart. Now, here's the deal. You say, well, how would you know if it's greater than 2 cents per second? Here's the way you know. Here's the way you know. Now, here's what you need to write. You need to mark this down. Each one of these little bitty squares is 0.04 hundredths of a second. You need to remember 0.04. 0.04 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. From this broad line to this broad line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 2 tenths per second. Now, if this PR interval, if this thing stretches on out here before the Q wave starts, it goes way on out like this and then goes down. After that point, that would be greater than 2 tenths of a second. And so they say you've got a first-degree heart block. First degree. That's just a first degree heart block. Then there's second-degree Mobitz 1, second-degree Mobitz 2, third degree. Then there's VPM, there's asystole. It will show up. So this is what, now right in through here, now if you look at this, now look, okay, from this point right here, from 0 out to way out here is 8 tenths of a second. All right, now right here is where we're going to begin the second P wave. We're going into the second beat. So this from here to here, Adrian, from right here to right out here is called a heart. That's a heart cycle. 8 tenths of a second is the time normally for a heart cycle, and they'll look at all that. But this right here represents atrial depolarization. When this thing and the atrial goes out like this. This right here represents ventricular depolarization, and the ventricles go like this. And the atria start this. This right here represents ventricular. I'm going to go slow over that. Ventricular repolarization, and the ventricles start doing this, and the atria start they'll start doing that. Okay, so this is the heart cycle right here. This is the way it looks. This is a textbook type of view of an EKG. That's an electrocardiogram showing a heart cycle. Now, what I have on your machine, what I have on your paper over here on this thing is this. All right, so look at that carefully. You have a book, that's in your book. That is in your book if you have a book. That's I didn't bring my book to class and everything, but that is it. All right, now look at the blue up there. Says atrial contraction. The yellow, ventricular contraction. Ventricle contraction. You know what contraction? Ventricle. That's the blue and the yellow. That's just a two-leg. That's just showing an electrocardiogram. Now right here, this will say right here, the P wave is atrial depolarization. Spread of the impulse. Now look carefully here. Spread of the impulse from the SA node through the muscle of the two atria. Now this is what's a little bit off kilter. This is what's a little bit off kilter in AFib. AFib means atrial fibrillation. Fibrillate. AFib. And the doctors just say AFib. All right, now, so if this thing, so P wave, the spread of the impulse from the SA node through the muscle of the two atria, and this is going to say right here, fraction of a second after the P wave begins, the two atria contract. The P wave is shown as a small upward wave. Here is the P wave right here. There's the P wave. What does that represent? Atrial depolarization. Once that begins, the atria do this. What are the ventricles doing? They're doing this. Okay? And when the atria do that, now if the atria are doing this, everybody, if they're doing that, this is where that's AFib, and that's very common. It's a very common situation. Seriously, it is. It's very, very common as people get a little bit older. It's very common. AFib.